we're 1 week in. There were some teams that looked really, 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 really bad. We'll get to the Panthers in a second, but it's a classic case of, all right, do you just say you're out on a team, or you feel like I'm not betting them until further notice just because of one preseason game where we saw starters play 2-3 series max. And the Jets' defensive line is fine. That much we know. But if you've been watching Hard Knocks, Robert Saleh, head coach, had some very choice words for his O-line, and that I look at them with two veteran elder statesmen tackles who have big injury concerns and go, that is a very major area of concern for the Jets heading into the season. So after the Hard Knocks episode came out, as we start our preseason panic meter, we'll either go 1 for not worried, 2 skeptical, 3 concerned, or 4 we're going full-blown panic. We'll see if we get to full-blown panic on anybody, JVT. But here was the Aaron Rodgers soundbite when asked about the O-line here coming out of that Hard Knocks episode as the Jets prepare for their 3rd preseason game this week.
It's a work in progress. I think I feel like it was Rich maybe asked a question about the continuity of the guys playing together. And I was thinking maybe we'd start to figure some stuff out. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet. There's jobs up for grabs. So that's the beauty in camp, but also the struggle is in talking with a couple of the guys. We just need some continuity, I think, at some point so guys can feel comfortable playing together. Maybe that's the end of next week. Maybe it's the week that we have in between the season and the last preseason game. But jobs are up for grabs. Keep
in mind, it's not like Aaron Rodgers is practicing very often right now as he deals with his own little calf injury he suffered that was viewed to be minor a couple days ago at practice, not playing, obviously, as we've talked about in any of the preseason games. But where's your level of panic on the Jets O-line?
I don't think it's like, what am I going to be? I'm not worried. I'll go skeptical. How about that?
Okay.
I feel like, so there's the thought of, hey, in the preseason, if you struggle, then that's something that you actually are concerned about and you take with you. If you're good, then you don't get any credit for it because you should be good in the preseason. So if there are some guys who have not played particularly well, either in camp or, of course, in the preseason, then I would say, sure, I think I'm a little skeptical. If you look over, though, and like some of the guys that you're expecting to play some pretty big roles for this team, I mean, I think overall, it's only one place, but in their preseason matchups that we've seen so far, right, for the New York Jets, guys who were expected to start actually graded out pretty well, didn't give up a ton of pressures in live game action in week 1 or in the Hall of Fame game. So I think overall, dare I say, a team with a reality show centered around them might be drumming up some narratives so that we can keep track of them and watch on Hard Knocks. I think that might actually be the case. So I'll say skeptical. I think they're going to be okay.
Sure. I would put myself in that same camp, and it hasn't even changed with what we just saw, those quotes coming out from Hard Knocks, because that was the one unit I was most skeptical of heading into the season. When you're relying on a guy in Mekhi Becton who didn't play in 2022, he's played in fewer than 800 snaps in the last 3 years, right. And then Dwayne Brown is 38 years old on the left side of the line. It's hard to have a lot of confidence going in. But having said all that, this is a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers who, along with Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, among the best in the league over the last few years at being able to really mask any of those issues on the O-line. And that's what I think the big question, like you go to Green Bay, it's like, how will that O-line look? They've been regarded as a top 10 unit for the better part of a half decade. And how much of that was because of Aaron Rodgers' ability to manipulate the pocket, get rid of the ball really quick. And so that's why I'll go skeptical with you on that for the Jets O-line as well.
And I'd also say as well, I think there's some somewhat decent depth here, right? I think when you look around and you see guys that are on this roster like Billy Turner or Lincoln Tomlinson and others, I think that they'd be fine when you're talking about the dudes you're mentioning at these bookend tackle spots. I think that you have a little bit of depth that even if Mekhi Becton doesn't work out, if Dwayne Brown never comes back, then I think you're actually going to be in an okay spot.
There's a belief, too, that Elijah Vera-Tucker, who is slated as a right guard, could also be moved outside and is more of a versatile piece there for the Jets. So that's a team, 9.5 win total. Very popular bet just because of the Aaron Rodgers factor, quarterback, and also the Hard Knocks factor. Let's go to another team in the AFC. This is in the running back room, though. And it's just one player. It's Jonathan Taylor, who has had quite the saga to start training camp and comes back only to then be excused for a personal absence yesterday. Right. Here was what the GM, Chris Ballard, had to say as the saga continues at Colts camp.
I think the world of Jonathan. He's been a great Colt, been a great player for the Colt. Unfortunately, last year he got hurt early in the season, was dinged all year, fought through it till he finally got to a point where he had to, have the surgery, and now he's finishing his rehab process. And so hopefully as we move forward here, we'll get him back, but we need to get him 100% healthy before we do anything.
GM Chris Ballard talking about Jonathan Taylor, and it's not just health. I mean, there's a whole bevy of items. So Am I wrong for being on the camp of full-blown panic on Jonathan Taylor when you consider how integral he is to the Colts under a first-year head coach and running back and quarterback having any success?
So I think there's two ways to look at this. I think you can go full-blown panic in the sense of, is Jonathan Taylor going to be part of this team when you get to week 1, right? But I think in terms of the impact of his loss, I think you can go skeptical. Only because, again, we've talked about this a while. It's why the running backs were the center of conversation all summer long and still are with Josh Jacobs and what's going on with him, is that if your offensive line is good enough, if the scheme is good enough, you can make up for a lack of a star running back. And Deion Jackson, over the course of 9 snaps against Buffalo, looked like a guy who potentially could maybe have a pretty nice role for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think those are the two ways to look at it. Are you really full-blown panic because Taylor might not be around at the start of the season? I would agree with that. But in terms of what his absence might mean, I think you're more like concerned or skeptical because I think there's obviously a chance at a scheme like this that you could probably have some success without Jonathan Taylor. The same level of success? No, but I think you could still be fine.
Yeah, and I think it's more just a combination of where Taylor is at in his process coming back, as well as the fact quarterback Anthony Richardson has basically admitted, without really saying it, I'm not really sure if I'm ready. And he's been given the keys of the car, and I would have been. Why
are you putting words in his mouth? I haven't seen any of that.
That's basically what he said. He said I feel like I'm ready, but I'm not really going to know until week 1.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically
that's what he said.
That is
journalism. All right, let's get the quote right.
I'm reading the tea leaves where it's like, if you're a quarterback and you're going,
reading the tea leaves leads to libel and slander.
Oh, yeah. If you're saying I don't really it'll depend on week 1. If the Colts had said, all right, we're going to give Gardner Minshew a few starts just to until we really feel comfortable with Anthony Richardson, given I believe that offensive line should be much better.
Sure.
I don't think it just all of a sudden cratered to a horrible unit just out of nowhere. And a lot of the rumors, at least, or the reports, are that was due to lack of development from head coach Frank Reich. So I'm a believer that the offensive line should be better. If you were telling me you had a healthy Jonathan Taylor, and if Minshew was going to take over, I'd be a lot higher on the Colts than where I'm at right now.
I don't think I'm of the mindset like you learn by doing, and
That's
we've seen now. And look, I've said this before, and we should always preface this by saying Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning were 2 much higher caliber prospects at quarterback than what Anthony Richardson was. The upside's clearly there. But look at the past with Colts franchise quarterbacks. They've done it, both of them, week 1. Just go out there, make your mistakes. Peyton Manning went 3-13 through 26, 28 interceptions his rookie year. Andrew Luck threw 18. Both were fine as their careers progressed. And I think I'm a big proponent of that, because how much are you actually learning 4 or 5 weeks of game plans that aren't tailored to you throughout a regular season if you're Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, that's a completely fair way to look at it, especially if you aren't believing, and this is a team that's 6.5 on the win total. Probably is not going to be a playoff contender anyway.
It's a year to do it, right? It's a year to make mistakes.
Yeah, this would be the time. I'm just talking from a game-to-game betting perspective. That's how I would have looked at the Colts. And we'll then throw in the team that Frank Reich is now head coaching, the Carolina Panthers. Mention how that did really look like JV offensive line versus varsity D-line, 27-0. Bryce Young was able to lead the team to 1 first down in 3 drives. The note that we get from our producer Elliot Bowman, who is as a Colt fan, he's had to deal with this in the past as a backer of Frank Reich-led teams. 0-4-1 in his week 1 record over his 5 seasons with the Colts. Where's your level of panic here with how bad the Panthers look?
I guess I'll go with concerned. Given Frank Reich's history, although I'll say, it's never really good, as we mentioned, to struggle in preseason. So that's, I think, a little bit of a concern. They also, I think, went out there to kind of get a sweat on. When you were watching, they weren't really doing much. So I think it's concerning, especially when one of the things that was thrown out there as to why you don't want to draft Bryce Young number 1 overall was the fact that he is small. And, of course, if you don't want him to take hits, and if he's going to take some hits for a team that has had offensive line issues for a while now, that would, I think, very much weigh down a team that has a head coach with a history of starting off slow in a division that does look winnable. And I think, I bet them to win this division. When I watched it, was I happy? No. But am I ripping up the ticket already, even though it's digital? No, I'm not at all. I don't think I'm too concerned at all.
Do you think books would start letting folks print out their digital tickets just so they could rip them up?
That'd be good.
That might be a cool.
Or at the very least, get the option digitally to hit a button, have it get torn up on your phone.
It just it gets all torn up for you. Because I would go. I'm kind of in between, not worried and skeptical. I don't want to just say this is nothing, but come on, this is 1 week of the preseason.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.